What's up, y'all? Jay McFadden, Just Jay LLC and Truckers Hustle, and this is the story of how I became a truck driver.
Get it, 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 get it.
It was 2014. I got my CDL, and I was looking for a company to go and work for. So I started off working for the same company that my dad helped to get started and get traction back in like the mid to late 90s. All right. Company shall and will remain nameless because of how terrible they were, both to my dad and to myself. And, I question myself a lot on, why I didn't do further research into going to another company before I jumped on with them, instead of putting myself through, all that crap. But I needed something. And at the time I was unemployed, and I knew my skills. And I knew what I was willing to do and capable of doing. Okay. But, short end of that story, that company took more advantage of that facet of me as an employee, or as a driver. And it was bad, man. It just wasn't good. I got into a bad contract. I wasn't owning the truck. I wasn't renting the truck. But the way that contract looked, it looked as if I was, renting or buying that truck. I'm paying for maintenance out of my paycheck. I'm paying for damages that happen. What about insurance? Insurance should cover the damages and stuff like that, right? So it was a terrible deal, man. They had a contract with General Electric, if I remember correctly, which, hey, good company, great company. The contracts that they had and the customers that they had were in places that were just unbelievable. Okay, so here I am driving a piece of equipment that's totaling a length of about 74 feet, and I'm going in places like tight spots. Like every place that I went to was just this ridiculously impossible type of place, and real susceptible to hitting cars, hitting property damage, causing damage, things like that. And I just got to the point where I wasn't comfortable with it. And, thinking about that, I was like, dude, if anything happens, I'm going to have to pay for this. Like, this isn't something that it's terrible, man. But I got away from that company. I took a break from the road for like maybe 4-5 months or something like that. And I started working with Old Dominion. So I was pulling doubles with them and volume runs, and then pedal runs. Okay, so pedal or PDL, pickup, delivery, less than truckload. That's usually what that means whenever you hear someone say that they're a pedal driver. Okay, so it was cool for a little bit too. It got to the point where I needed something more. The pay was pretty decent for what it was at the time. That was 2014 going into 2015. So I think at the time I was making like $22.30 starting out. So it wasn't bad. For me, it wasn't terrible. I didn't have like a bunch of crazy bills I was paying or anything like that. And ended up getting a raise before I left. But I left them, and I went to work for another guy that was, this starts the journey of me getting to the point of becoming an owner operator. So I'd leave Old Dominion and I start working for this guy that had his own company. He had like maybe 4 trucks or something, 4 or 5 trucks, something like that. And he had a few people working for him, and each truck was running the road, whatever. But another company that will remain nameless, because how things kind of shook out toward the end, it just wasn't good. But with this guy in particular, one day I take a load up to, I can't remember, I was coming back from like Frederick, Maryland or something like that, going back into Baltimore, and the truck it started doing something crazy. Like I'm driving forward and it's like the Jake brakes were on, but they just would not go off. So I don't know if a solenoid got stuck open, whatever, right? So the truck had to go in the shop. He had a shop that was working on all of his trucks. They did good work there. They did pretty decent. So with the truck I was driving being in the shop, another one of his guys just so happened to go on vacation. So he was like, hey, you're going to use his truck instead to run this next run. I was like, okay, cool, no problem. I take this load up to Connecticut or Massachusetts, somewhere up there. Wherever it was going, it was close enough for me to be able to leave Baltimore, get up to Connecticut or Mass, one of them, and make it back down into Baltimore in time. It was a drop and hook. It was pretty simple. It was pretty easy, right? I'm on the road. I'm coming back down, and I say, hey, I need to fill this truck up before I park it. That was just a courtesy thing that I like to do if I'm driving somebody else's truck, right? So I stop at the truck stop, and I'm filling fuel up. And I'll ask you this one question, and you can answer it however you want. But you pull up to a truck stop, and you go to the fuel island. What's that one thing that you smell? Diesel, right? Okay, so diesel, oil, whatever, mostly diesel you're smelling. So I fill this truck up, and I get back on the road. I'm going back down, and I come back into Port Deposit in Maryland, up in top off of, at the top of Maryland on 95, just before you cross over the Chesapeake Bridge, right? I get there to the scale house, and DOT pulls me on, and they're like, hey, pull around to the back, pull to the inspection bay. I'm like, okay, something must be wrong. I don't know what, we're going to find out, right? So I'm pulling back around there. DOT officer comes up. He's like, yeah. He's like, you smell that? I was like, yeah, I smell it. It smells like diesel. He's like, yeah, you're leaking diesel. I'm like, well, that's kind of weird. Okay, I'm leaking diesel. He's like, yeah, unfortunately, I got to put you out of service. So it's like, just take your truck, park it over there in the row, and you can call. He's like, you can call a shop or something like that, and they'll, come out, fix the truck, whatever you need to do. Like, okay, cool, no problem. So I do that. I call the owner of the company. Okay, I call him, and I let him know, like, hey, man, look, this is what happened. And he's like, Jay, you didn't do an inspection on the truck? I'm like, no, wait a minute. I did do an inspection on the truck. I didn't find anything that was wrong or anything like that, but I did an inspection on the truck. Well, you up there and they're putting you out of service, and I don't have no time or money to come up there and get you right now, Jay. You're gonna have to stay up there till tomorrow morning. I'm like, okay. You don't have the time or money to come and get me. I'm like 30 minutes away from my house. I'm in another dude's truck who's basically living in the truck. He wasn't in the truck, but all of his belongings were in there. Okay. I'm not climbing in this dude's bed. There's no room on the top bunk. Okay. I'm not staying in this truck overnight when I live 30 to 45 minutes away from where I'm at right now. And I asked my guy, I was like, so you're not gonna do anything about it? You're not gonna have it? He's like, no, I'm not. I'm okay, cool, no problem. So I called a guy that was he was already there. He was on the spot, and he was worried. He's like, yeah, this is gonna cost you about $1,500 to get that truck down there. That's why I'm not trying to have anybody come out there right now. I'm not sending no tow truck. I'm not sending nobody to repair it. When your out of service time is done, which is 10 hours, when your out of service time is done, you'll drive the truck back down into Baltimore so they can work on it. Okay, so I'll drive this truck in violation after hours, and all of that is 10 hours service is up and all of that. I drive this truck back down into Baltimore so they can work on it when it's not repaired. Okay, so you're talking about me putting a vehicle back on the road that's already out of service and risking my CDL, possibly me going to jail. Not happening, man. So this guy was already there, mechanic. He was already on site. He's like, yeah, man, what's wrong? I was like, man, it's a fuel leak. I don't know what it is, where it's coming from, or anything like that. So he found it like pretty quick. Okay, he found it somewhere near the fuel tank. I think it was like a sending unit or something like that had came loose or whatever, man. The repair cost about $150. Okay. So he's like, yeah, man. He's like, if you want, you can call your boss back and let him know that I fixed the truck and it's not going to be as expensive as he thought it was. I was like, you know what, man? I'm not going to do that, because if I call him back, he'll either not answer the phone or he'll cuss me out for whatever reason. And I don't feel like that. So I was like, let me just chill. I'll pay for it myself. And I paid out of pocket. I paid this guy $150 and I got back in service and I left. I went home. I took that truck and I parked it back in the parking lot where I got it from. I got in my car and I went home. Next day, my boss calls me and he's like, yeah, Che, I got a load for you going up to such and such. I was like, hey, man, look, you know what? I'm done. I'm done. You got to find somebody else to take it. What do you mean, Che? What do you mean you got to find somebody else to take it? I was like, man, I'm done. The way you acted last night about this truck being out of service, I was like, I paid for it out of pocket, man. I let him know. I was like, I paid for it out of pocket. I was like, I'm not asking you for anything. I was like, and to be very honest with you, I don't even want the final paycheck from you, man. Like, if you send it, cool. If not, wonderful. I don't care. I was like, but working for you basically has been very stressful for no reason. And I'm tired of it. I'm done. Okay. But Che, I spent $1,700, $2,200 to get this truck for the IRP plan and get this truck registered for you to drive it. And now you're telling me that you basically quit. I was like, hey man, have a good one. Best of luck to you. I hung the phone up. All right. That's what I'm talking about with owner operators taking care of their drivers, man. And drivers being as honest. I've always been respectful to that guy. I've never disrespected him. Okay. And the person that I am would have quit a long time ago, like within the first or second week of running for this guy, with how disrespectful he was, man. Like, at the time I was like, you know what? I have a goal. I'm going to be disciplined and just see the light at the end of the tunnel and get there. All right. Nobody should have to go through that. Nobody should have to subject themselves to that. And if you've watched my one video about respect in the trucking industry, you'd understand what I'm talking about. So I was like, man, you know what? Keep the check, whatever. Basically have a good life. That was February, I want to say January or February of 2016. And in March, that's when, my dad and we got together and said, hey, you know what? Let's do this thing. I borrowed the money from him. I went out and I bought a truck, man. And that's when I started my venture to becoming an owner operator. And it was such a surreal moment. Everything in that moment changed. Because, you don't really have, a lot of people don't have the benefit of being able to go to their family to borrow money for something like that. A lot of people's families are not willing to give anybody in the family any money for, to borrow for whatever reason. All right. That's another road I don't really want to go down, but I was pretty fortunate to be able to experience that. So, my dad and we went into business, but he didn't really want anything to do with it. He just funded the venture. Okay. And I could never repay him for setting me up the way that he did, man. He's always been in the truck, and he's the reason I got into trucking. All right. But I go and I buy this truck, the 09 International Pro Star, and I leased on with Landstar. Well, before I leased on with them, I leased on with a local company in the area of Baltimore City. I'm from Baltimore. So, a lot of people that were working at the company that my dad currently still works at today, they left that company to get their own truck and run for this subcontract for this other company that operates out of Baltimore. Okay. It's like 2 or 3 other companies that stood up and are big time out of Baltimore. From last time I checked, man, they were rocking it. Okay. But I went and subcontracted for them and was like, yeah, this is, I think this is really, I know this is what I really want to do. This is it. Unfortunately, one of the companies had this thing where it's like, you gotta, that whole seniority thing, which, hey, in some places, if it's a thing, cool. But we're all doing the same thing. There are a lot of us that are not willing to go certain places. A lot of us are not willing. Like me, for example, I refuse to go back into New York. Okay. And if I go back into New York, from Baltimore, that load better be paying somewhere between about $5,000 and $6,000. All right. So that's another story for another day. But, you know, nobody really wants to go up there. So a lot of the loads that were based out of Baltimore that were going anywhere at all would travel from, or would run from Baltimore down to like Virginia or over to West Virginia, up to some parts of PA and some parts of Delaware, everywhere but New York City. And it's not like these loads were light. I mean, we're pulling Domino's sugar, we're pulling Nestle water, loads that weigh upwards of about 43 to 45,000 pounds, excuse me. Heavy loads going both ways, right? The truck that I bought at the time, that ProStar, was terrible on fuel. And because I didn't know it at the time, but I needed to replace my thermostat. Thermostat was bad, causing the truck to overheat. The truck overheating didn't really give any kind of indication, but the fan was always running. Okay, the fan clutch always engaged, so it's putting a lot of workload on the engine. I couldn't fill that truck up and get 2 days out of it. I'd fill it up and get a day or a day and a half. And that's terrible. You fill a truck up and you're running a decent amount, you should get at least 2 days out of running with that truck if you're running it. Okay. So, you know, that was that company. I ended up leaving them and I subcontracted for Landstar. And then the rest is from there, it really is history, because Landstar really was that contractor that got me to where, or helped get me to where I am today. All right. You know, I was able to run my own loads. I was able to, you know, talk directly with agents, brokers, things like that, and really game plan how I wanted to run. I did it terribly, but even as terribly as I did it, I still did it better than subcontractor for a lot of the other companies that most people would subcontract for. It's cool, man. It's really cool. But after Landstar, it was Mercer. And then once it was Mercer, that's all it's been. You get a lot of leverage and a lot of freedom with them. Honestly, guys, I know it's kind of a long, weird story, but that's how I got into trucking. And it, for me, it's definitely not something that is forever. I don't believe that anybody should really plan for something like this to be forever, in a sense of them being in the driver's seat anyway, right? So what that means is if you have a family or something like that, or you're starting a family and you want to make it a family business, maybe you could pass it down to your children or over to a brother or sister or cousin or whoever. If you're going to do that, you could, you know, basically set yourself up to be in that kind of position to be able to do that kind of thing. I think that's great. Personally, I will not be trucking forever, because just the road isn't what it used to be. The respect isn't what it used to be. Truckers used to be able to, you know, actually go out and help each other out. I mean, we still can. A lot of truckers that help other truckers today are the elders that are in it. I respectfully use the term elders because they have the mindset of, you know, what trucking should really be. All right. A lot of the younger generation getting into trucking, the respect just isn't there, man. And I mean, it's not the same. But in a nutshell, that's the story of how I became a trucker. I'm glad, you know, I did things the way that I did them to get to where I want to be. But long term, trucking is not the answer for me. And I've already started the process of doing something else. But the knowledge that I have about the industry, it can't stay up here. I gotta pass that on to y'all and help you out if I can, as much as possible. All right. I know there's a lot of people that are trying to get into it, and there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. There's a way to get in it and be upside down and be financially hurting. And you don't have to be like that. So with that being said, if you haven't already, please subscribe, share this video to whoever you may know out there that's trying to get into trucking or want to at least get some kind of information on a part of the industry. It doesn't have to be trucking. It can be freight brokering. It can be agent work. It can be if you want to be a dispatcher or a coordinator or something like that. You don't have to be holding the steering wheel. I'm going to tell you something, man. If you aren't the one holding the steering wheel, the responsibility is still as great, if not greater, for you running a company, a trucking company. All right. You've got people you've got to manage, whether it's 1 or 2 or 3, and you need to keep them happy. They're out there on that road. They're making that money. They're doing the hard work. Okay. You need to remember that they're doing the hard work. They're out there away from their homes, their families, their loved ones, and they're very limited to what they can do, very limited to the places that they can sleep, and most importantly, the meals that they can eat and the things that they're putting in their bodies to nourish themselves. So you need to take care of them, man. You really do. You need to take care of them. And if you don't, they're going to end up doing just what I did to that guy that I worked for that second company. They're going to up, leave, or that third company or whatever. They up, leave, no problem. At least I parked this truck back where I found it in great condition, repaired and everything out of my pocket, and told him to keep the rest of the money. Told him, don't worry about that last paycheck. All right. So keep that in mind, man. You're not going to get people like that. Trucking is an industry with a revolving door. People are going to come and go. You got to keep that mentality, but take care of the ones that are there and present for you in that moment. Okay? Because if you take care of them, they'll take care of your equipment. They'll help take care of you. Just keep that in mind, man. I'm Che McFadden, Just Che LLC Truckers Hustle. I really appreciate y'all tuning in and watching us. Subscribe, like, share, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Thank you.
Get it, 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 hey, get it, get it, get it, hey, get it, get it, get it, get it, yeah, get it, get it, on my soul, ain't no letting up.